was from this house at Hopewell, New Jersey, Colonel Lindbergh's home, that the kidnapping of his baby son that shocked the world in March 1932 took place. These are the only motion pictures of Charles Augustus Lindbergh, and they were specially shown in America to aid in his recovery. He was 20 months old when he was stolen away at night from this window. The whole country was aroused by the terrible crime, and an intensive search was carried out by day and night, ultimately leading to the discovery of the poor murdered child. It was in September 1934 that Colonel Lindbergh attended the Bronx County Court House in connection with the arrest of Bernard Richard Hauptmann, the German accused of the crime. Now the trial is on, and great sympathy is felt for Colonel and Mrs. Lindbergh, who have already undergone the ordeal of examination in the case that is so full of bitter grief for them.
The Battle of Okinawa followed the pattern of other island battles in the Far East in the sense that land, air and sea forces all played their own vital parts. An impression of bombardment from the sea, with rocket ships adding great firepower to the guns of the task force. The strength added by British warships in the bombardment of the Ryukyu Islands was a feature of great significance to the Japs. Even more than that, the Battle of Okinawa was a battle fought within 362 miles of the Japanese mainland. Naturally, the Japs went all out to hit back with their air force, but perhaps the best comment on how the Allies replied to that is provided by the pictures that follow. With their so-called ally Germany then already virtually wiped out, with the Americans invading an island air base under 400 miles from their homeland, the Japanese must have obtained as clear a view of their eventual fate as their pilots did when they crashed off Okinawa.
Russian newsreel pictures of the actual taking of Berlin have now been released. They show the climax of 8 days fighting in the German capital. Now, at last, the Red Army battles through to the very heart of the city. Now, at last, after all the ghastly years of toil, blood, tears and sweat, the climax of total German defeat is reached with the death of Berlin. Retribution is incidental in the course of military operations, but certainly here in Berlin there was all the evidence of it. Retribution for the havoc caused by Hitler's Huns in Leningrad and Warsaw, London, Coventry, Rotterdam, and all the devastated cities of the Allies. By April the 30th, all the main districts of Berlin had been overrun and occupied by the Red Army. Now they broke through to the Reichstag and the center of the capital. Berlin was down and out. So were the survivors of its garrison, now belied the slogans on the walls. These were impressions gathered by Russian cameramen during the last days of the battle. They were followed by Allied cameramen's impressions of the immediate aftermath. Victory signs erected in the Unter den Linden by the Russians. A Red Army girl taking over the direction of traffic. A very smart job too. The Americans in Berlin, the official ceremony of their taking over the Adolf Hitler barracks from Soviet forces. The entry of the British, the desert rats, drive into Berlin. For them, it's the climax of a very long and a very hard journey in which they've earned immortal glory. But it won't be the end of the journey if young Nazis are allowed to grow up like their fathers. The ceremony of the British takeover was held at the Victory Column of the Franco-Prussian War. Major General Line, commanding British troops in Berlin, took the salute at the march past, which included Canadian units, the Guards, and other United Kingdom troops. As for Berlin itself, well, just take a look at it. We in Britain are not without experience in the matter of bomb damage. From these pictures, the experienced eye will certainly obtain confirmation of the colossal bombing dealt out to Berlin. Right from the earliest attacks by the RAF and on through their later assaults of record weight, coupled with the Americans' very heavy bombings, the work of the airmen had cleared the way for victory. No doubt about it, is there? Berlin has had it. The devastation in Hitler's capital was vast. So was the task of clearing up. Scenes like this, once only too familiar in our own cities, were typical of life in Berlin. Transport for civilians was almost non-existent, but queues formed for what there was. Berlin as a capital, as a city even, was dead. This was what remained of the Reichstag, the building which gained worldwide notoriety when the Nazis seized power. And here's Hitler's chancellery. It's worthwhile taking a closer look. British and Russian officers thought so too. Hitler's desk, and the chair he used when he worked. The banqueting room where the Nazis and their guests toasted Hitler and the German Reich and victory. The entrance to Hitler's air raid shelter. It was just outside that the bodies of Hitler and Eva Braun are said to have been destroyed. At any rate, that's one story, but we can all form our own opinion as to whether these are relics of the event or not. The Germans said petrol was poured over their bodies and they were burnt. It might be true, it might not. In any case, the Allies are in command here now, and from the balcony on which Adolf used to spout, a new Adolf now held the audience spellbound. We gather from this brilliant impersonation that he doesn't really admire the Führer, wherever he may be.
Right in the Führer's face, not to love the Führer. He's a case, so we right in the Führer's face.
The story of the Italian campaign, and what a magnificent story it is. A story of unbroken victory, which began under the leadership of General Montgomery and his 8th Army at the Battle of Alamein. That was the real turning of the tide. And afterwards, the enemy was swept back right across North Africa, rounded up in Tunisia, smashed in Sicily and southern Italy. From Alamein to Italy, that's an epic already recorded in full. And in the Battle of Italy, certain episodes have already claimed their own chapters, like the Battle of Salerno, for instance. This was a critical moment in the Allies' progress towards Naples and Rome. It should be regarded as only one example of the difficulties, the hazards, and the bitterness of the Italian campaign. The Germans obviously regarded Italy as a vital theatre of war, and the Allied entry into Rome in no way lessened the enemy's resolution. Last year, as we know now, great inroads were made upon Allied strength in Italy, and from D-Day onwards, the battles of the Western Front naturally stole the picture. But today, the famous 8th and 5th Armies have crowned their fame with an exploit that in many ways is unparalleled in history. Latest pictures show the Allied entry into Bologna, where they received the sort of welcome that is nowadays accorded everywhere when people are freed from Nazi rule. The Allied armies in Italy have contained many elements besides American and British. All have fought superbly in a unique comradeship, but more than half of the total were British, and the majority of that half came from the United Kingdom. Now the glory of the great victory is shared by them all, whatever their nationality, and by their leaders. It wasn't long after the capture of Bologna that the Allied armies under General Clark, that daring American soldier, as Mr. Churchill has called him, completely crushed the German will to continue the fight. The Supreme Commander, Field Marshal Alexander, has proved beyond all doubt one of the greatest military leaders of this war. In the dark days, he was last to leave France. In Burma, he extricated an army. In the Mediterranean, he has planned and achieved total victory. Prisoners were already being taken in their tens of thousands when the Hun surrendered unconditionally, a surrender involving nearly 1 million German soldiers. Comment on such an event is superfluous. In the royal palace at Caserta, the German delegates, a colonel and a major, came in to sign the surrender wearing mufti. Alexander's chief of staff, Lieutenant General Morgan, addressed them.
I understand that you are prepared to sign terms of surrender on behalf of General von Wickinghoff, Commander-in-Chief Southwest.
When it came to signing, the German colonel made a statement about not being able to guarantee that the terms would be accepted by his superiors.
Ich kann dies aber nicht mit völliger Sicherheit versprechen.
He assumes that his commander-in-chief is going to approve of his action, but he cannot give an absolute assurance to this effect.
We accept those conditions.
Though it would be interesting to know why the Germans were not in uniform, it was obviously a moment of the greatest satisfaction to the Allied officers watching them sign on the dotted line. After General Morgan had added his signature to the historic documents, the Germans were given 3 copies, one of them in their own language, and the brief proceedings were politely but firmly brought to an end by the General.
Thank you, gentlemen. I ask you to withdraw now.
That was that. Unconditional surrender of nearly 1 million men signed away by German officers in sports coats.